Well, for me, I'm Korean American.
I'm a first generation college student.
I'm also a first generation student, or first generation to go to college.
I'm a first gen student as well, and I'm Mexican American, and I grew up in a rural community of immigrants where the majority of people here were like undocumented.
I'm biracial. I'm from Texas, San Antonio, Texas.
Your identity it's who you are. It's the core of your being. And yet sometimes it's so scary to acknowledge it.
This discussion is simply about us, about you, about your experience at UCLA, about your experience generally as a person with a disability, and what that sort of means to be part of a neurodiverse sort of spectrum and diversity spectrum as a whole.
The part of my identity that most informs the way I live is being autistic.
I am an Asian woman. I am dyslexic.
My disability is PTSD.
A few years ago, I went through a really traumatizing experience, and I disassociated for half a year after that. And I started negotiating my identities to myself.
I have ADHD. I have really bad ADHD, and I have also bipolar 1 and general anxiety disorder.
I've had so many different diagnoses, and right now the ones that seems to be sticking is major depressive disorder.
I only recently was diagnosed, but I had been living with the symptoms of PTSD since I was in my youth, since I was about 11 years old.
I was diagnosed with GAD and MDD and bipolar 3 when I was 16.
The disability that predominantly affects me in my life is complex PTSD, and I felt that I was too sensitive. I was too sensitive to succeed in an academic space when my sensitivities were actually debilitating symptomology of survivorship.
I would say I'm disabled because that's how society treats the way society treats the characteristics of being autistic.
I wasn't even diagnosed until earlier this year with dyslexia because they couldn't comprehend that an Asian person had a disability rather than just labeling me as stupid or special. They were like, oh, she's Asian, she should be smart. We don't understand why she's not smart. Must be stupid. Next. And then they didn't even consider that it was just that my brain worked differently.
As a first gen student, I think that's where, for me, the crosses between being queer, disabled, and first gen is where the hardest intersection of identities and experiences have come up, is when you don't even know what questions to ask. So when I don't have questions, I don't get answers, I don't get help.
I'm also a Latina, and growing up, my parents didn't believe that, mental illnesses were a thing.
I have to kind of choose between my identities. Okay, within the Latino culture, okay, am I gonna, act like I'm okay and still strive for the same goals and do everything else? Or am I gonna accept the fact, okay, I do have an obstacle in my way. How can I overcome this? And how do I ask for help? Because I feel like in the Latino culture, in the household, we have not learned and we have not discussed with our own families, how do we ask for help instead of just trying to power through it on our own?
When I got to UCLA, it was the first time that I kind of realized that it is debilitating, and, sometimes I can't go to classes and, it's not because I'm lazy, it's because I genuinely cannot. And so I think over time, I've definitely been having those uncomfortable conversations with my parents and my family, and kind of being unapologetic about it and not feeling bad about it, because like you said, it's I don't have a visible disability, and it's hard, especially for parents, to kind of see that and validate that. So yeah, but it wasn't until I came to UCLA where I found a community, and I was able to talk to doctors and stuff like that.
At UCLA, I've had a few peers who understood disability justice.
There are places for me to get help and support, and I've been able to do that in have a much more positive graduate school experience than my undergrad.
At UCLA, I'm a neuroscience major, so it's allowed me to understand more that like what I have, it's a permanent thing, but it's not like a disability. It's just a different brain it's like a different rewiring of the brain. So I started seeing it as like something inferior and something that's just different.
I at one point we were just having this conversation. I was telling him about why I was in the hospital and all that sort of stuff, and I started like crying. And the second I started crying, he just like hugged me, and it was like this moment of like, oh, I made a friend here. Like, this is a human being that like I feel I've made a connection with, and that hug is like genuinely one of the most impactful moments of my entire life. I still remember everything about it, and thank you for the clap.
So I think that's really important that we really ask for help and we search for support during these difficult times when we're learning. So yeah.